Live from Washington, this is BBC News.
243 points! We have a winner!
It's Loreen.
A historic end to Eurovision, with Sweden's Loreen becoming the first woman to win the contest twice.
I'm so happy and I'm so thankful. Thank you for this. This is for you. Thank you.
Volodymyr Zelensky and the Pope hold talks at the Vatican, but the pontiff stops short of directly criticizing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And a ceasefire takes effect in the Gaza Strip after 5 days of fighting between Israel and Palestinian militants. Hello, I'm Carl Nasman. Welcome to the program. We start with a bit of disco lights here in the studio in Washington. The wait is over for Eurovision fans. In the last hour, there they are, the last hour in Liverpool, the winner of this year's Eurovision Song Contest has been announced. Sweden taking the crown for the 7th time, and Loreen's song is the winner, Tattoo. This was the moment her victory was announced. Loreen, already the bookies' favorite, but she now becomes the first woman to ever win the contest twice after her victory in 2012 with the track Euphoria. While Loreen led most of the way with the jury vote, here she is with her winning performance of Tattoo earlier. Quite the performance there, and here she is accepting the award.
Only the second person to win the Eurovision contest twice. Wow. Johnny Logan being the first. Now you. How does it feel?
This is overwhelming. I'm so happy and I'm so thankful. Thank you for this. This is for you. Thank you.
We're so happy for you, Loreen, bringing Eurovision back to Sweden for ABBA's 50th anniversary year. It's so special.
Well, just after Loreen was announced as the winner, I spoke to our chief presenter, Miriam Ashiri, who's been following all the action in Liverpool.
Well, it's so exciting. What a show. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I just love the way that Eurovision keeps you on the edge of your seat until the very last minute, all through the end, all through the voting, the jury voting. Sweden kept getting 12 points, 12 points, 12 points over and over again. Finland were around about 4th or 5th place, and then we went to televoting. Now, televoting changes everything, and clearly audiences from not only Europe but around the world, for the first time, even audiences in the US could vote for Eurovision, and they voted in their droves for Finland. So at one point, Finland was in the lead, but at the very last minute, Sweden's audience votes were counted. They needed 187 points to beat Finland, and they got over 200 points. So history is made. Loreen, a Eurovision legend, already the queen of Eurovision, is now a 2-time winner. Only Johnny Logan from Ireland has done that before. This also means that Sweden is now a 7-time winner of the Eurovision.
Hopefully we can go there together. I'd love a little trip to Sweden. I mean, incredible how good Sweden is at Eurovision. How many times they've won. Like you said, Loreen now only the second person to win this event twice. What was it about this performance, do you think, that got the fans behind her and got the judges behind her?
I think it was just a beautifully written and executed song. The stage was amazing. The performance was brilliant. She had the longest nails I've ever seen in my life. Apparently they had to be removed by nail technicians after every performance. But I think also, Carl, it comes down to the fact that Loreen is Eurovision legend. In 2012, she won with that amazing song, Euphoria. And that changed Eurovision. That really made Eurovision a different kind of competition. I think to some degree the song is amazing, to another degree Loreen is amazing, and she is the queen of Eurovision, and people, have wanted to come out and honor her and respect her. And Tattoo's a great song, but let's not forget Finland also did really, really well. Carrier, a brilliant song, Cha 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 Cha. It was my favorite. I can say that now, the competition is over. It was my favorite, and actually in terms of the televoting, it was the winning song. It's just not quite enough to win the entire thing. But, I know that everyone who's watching is going to think, look, all the performances were amazing and the show was amazing, and Liverpool has put on such a fantastic Eurovision. Everyone's been saying it, and I have to say, at the end of what's been a fantastic week, it's been one of the best Eurovisions we've ever had.
Well, it looks like you've been having a great time there. The people of Liverpool have been having a fantastic time. Of course, we know that Ukraine was meant to be hosting this year because they won last year. Just talk about the atmosphere in the city and how it's pulled everyone together.
Absolutely, Carl. Yes, I wish you had been here to get a flavour of that atmosphere because, of course, as you mentioned, the Kalisz Orchestra won the event in 2022. Therefore, they should really have held the event in Kiev, in Ukraine, but the war with Russia has meant that was just deemed too dangerous. So Liverpool and the UK stepped up and stepped in. And to really mark the fact that it should have been in Ukraine, there have been references, signposting. There has been a real embrace of Ukrainian culture, Ukrainian music, Ukrainian food. Everywhere you walk in this wonderful city, you see the blue and yellow of the Ukrainian flag. You see photography exhibitions of Ukrainian photographs. You see bands playing Ukrainian music. Really, a lot of Ukrainians that I've spoken to who've come here from all over the country to Liverpool to be part of this have told me that Liverpool feels to them like they are at home, and that really is a wonderful thing to behold. And also in the show, there was a lot of referencing to Ukraine as well. It all kicked off with the Kalisz Orchestra from last year, and of course, Ukraine's performance, Tvorchi. They had a stunning performance. Didn't do as well as they did last year, of course, but a great performance nonetheless.
Miriam, I have to ask you before we let you go, did you have a favorite memory or a favorite moment from this year's Eurovision?
I did, and it's a really embarrassing one. I interviewed, well, actually, wait a minute. Marco from Italy, Marco Mengoni, I interviewed him. He was delightful, to say the very least. That was great. But the most embarrassing moment was when Jedward, former Eurovision contestants for Ireland, they've been entries twice in this competition, came here to the studio and just started dancing, boogieing and grinding with me. And I kind of felt, what am I supposed to, am I like a newsreader? Am I supposed to be serious, or am I supposed to get down with them? It was slightly awkward, and they replayed that shot over and over again earlier on the news channel. So that's my most embarrassing moment.
You never know what will happen at Eurovision or what will it bring out of you. Mary Mashiri, thank you so much for all of your coverage this week with Sweden now being crowned champion. Thank you so much. Well, it is called Eurovision, but the song contest has plenty of fans here in the U.S. as well. And this year, for the first time ever, Americans and fans from anywhere in the world were actually allowed to vote, even if their own country did not compete. Alicia Michelle is one of those U.S. superfans. Tonight, she's the host of a large Eurovision watch party right here in Washington, D.C., which she live streamed on YouTube. That was the moment when it became clear that Sweden was the winner. All right, Alicia is joining us now live from that watch party in Washington, D.C. So you've been watching, you've been live streaming all night. We saw that Loreen was crowned a champion. What was your reaction? We just saw it. You seemed pretty excited.
Look, y'all, I had to take a moment. I had to breathe in. I had to breathe out. because this is the thing. I think that there were some people who are maybe just thinking, oh, Sweden's just going to walk away with it. But let's be realistic. She did not walk away with this win. Finland gave her a real fight, but yet she still was able to remain victorious and at the top, and is our Eurovision 2023 winner.
Well, we just heard from Miriam Bashiri, who was there in Liverpool, describing Loreen as the queen of Eurovision. Talk about her. She won in 2012, winning again this year. I believe she's 39 years old. I mean, really an amazing performance and an amazing Eurovision career.
I mean, it's amazing. And I mean, of course, I'm right here in DC. You can hear DC sounds around me, I think. But I will tell you, I think that Eurovision, if you look at Eurovision pre-2012, if you look at the Eurovision Song Contest before she won, and look at it after, it looks different. When Euphoria won, that was a song that really changed the way that the song contest was, I think, even taken in just by Europe. So the fact that she is now our second winner of Eurovision, it actually doesn't feel that crazy because she really was someone who marked a moment in the Eurovision Song Contest. And now we're seeing it, I think, graduate again beyond another chapter potentially.
That's really interesting. I mean, what was it about Euphoria that changed Eurovision?
I think the fact that it was something that was radio friendly. I think it was something that felt current. I think it was something that didn't feel like just Eurovision. It felt like something that felt like, oh, this is just what people would be interested in.
Friends on WhatsApp, whether or not they were watching Eurovision this year, no one said yes. It's a bit of a struggle to get Americans to pay attention, isn't it? How would you rate the amount of attention and fandom that you're seeing with Eurovision here in the United States?
I mean, look, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and maybe we're at a little bit of like kind of a skewed perspective because we have such a big international community here in D.C. And I have to say, I mean, I'm from D.C., so maybe that's why I might be partial to Eurovision, but we had over 600 people RSVP between the semifinal events and the grand final. So if Eurovision was something that wasn't popping in the United States before, I think it's harder to make that announcement now.
Getting bigger and bigger. And Alicia, this was the first year, of course, that Americans could vote. Just briefly, if you can, did you vote and who did you vote for?
I mean, look, I voted, but look, I'm a strategic voter. So
okay.
I wasn't throwing all my weight behind Sweden and Finland. I was kind of like, I want to help out some of the countries that I think Europe might not give some points to. But of course, I mean, I can't lie. I mean, I gave some points to Finland. I gave some points to Sweden.
Well,
but,
Loreen,
I mean...
Loreen collecting all the points tonight, doing very well. And Alicia Michelle, American Eurovision fan and host of a big-time watch party there in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Ukraine is, of course, one of the official Eurovision hosts this year as they still deal with a brutal war at home. We want to bring you some developing news concerning the invasion and the events there. According to reports, Russia attacked the western Ukrainian city of Ternopil as the Ukrainian Eurovision entry tvorchi, who hail from that city, were about to take to the stage in Liverpool. The Ternopil Regional State Administration head says 2 civilians have been injured and warehouses belonging to commercial companies and a religious organization were hit. Just moments after the final began, the air raid sirens sounded over almost the entire Ukrainian territory. You can see here most of the regions were on high alert because of missiles. People were advised to stay in bomb shelters. Explosions were heard there in Ternopil, which is in the western area of Ukraine. Well, despite not being able to host due to the war, many Ukrainians were still keen to follow along from home. This is a bar in Kyiv where fans still enjoyed the competition all the same. And our correspondent Hugo Bachega has been speaking with some of them.
Frustrated, but because of the war, because of lots of people dying and lots of people losing their homes, businesses, like relatives. It's hurtful in any case, but not in case of Eurovision. Like, yeah, Eurovision is continuing, and we have our representative. We have lots of countries that still participate, so we're all good. And we participate as well.
I feel okay because you guys as a Britain did a very good job, and we're really grateful that it's truly a Ukrainian-British Eurovision this year. So we watch with my friends, and we can feel so much Ukrainian history, culture, and energy on the stage, and it's amazing. Maybe we didn't even would do such a good job as we did in a collaboration with you guys in Britain.
It's really huge support, and I feel it like from here. I don't expect some support from here right now on Eurovision because, like we already talked, that it's not a political show, kind of that. But now I see that half of the songs are kinda about us and kinda support us, and this is really important.
Now let's leave Eurovision behind and look at Rome now, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is on a one-day visit. He met the Pope as well as political leaders there. The Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has promised to supply more weapons and money to Ukraine, but that promise is not universally supported by her coalition partners, as Sofia Batista reports.
A grand welcome in Rome. This is the first time that President Zelensky has visited Italy since Russia invaded Ukraine. On his arrival, he tweeted it was an important visit for the approaching victory against Russia. And it was a packed agenda. First, a private meeting with his counterpart, the Italian President Sergio Mattarella.
First of all, I'm here to thank all of Italian society. Unfortunately, I do not have time to shake hands with everyone, to hug them, for the great support Italy has provided to Ukraine.
Then, a working lunch with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni.
We guarantee our support for peace, as long as it's a just peace. We're not so hypocritical as to pretend that anything that resembles an invasion is peace. This is important because peace can't be achieved through any kind of surrender on Ukraine's side.
But Italy is a country that, historically, has strong ties with Russia, and some members of Meloni's government are not so keen on sending weapons to Kyiv. After several political meetings, a private audience with the head of the Catholic Church. This is the first time that President Zelensky and Pope Francis meet since Russia invaded Ukraine last year. The Pope has called for peace in Ukraine time and again. And even though he does not take political sides, this meeting is very symbolic. They spoke for 40 minutes and both agreed on the need to continue humanitarian efforts towards the victims of the conflict. The Pope told Mr. Zelensky he constantly prays for peace in Ukraine. He cannot enforce peace, but he can be an influential figure. Sofia Batista, BBC News, Rome.
A look now at some other stories making headlines. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has called for supporters to hold nationwide protests. It follows days of clashes between his followers and security forces. Mr. Khan repeated his call for immediate elections and told supporters they would have to make sacrifices for their freedom. Earlier, Pakistan's current Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, ordered the police to arrest everyone involved in the widespread unrest. Around 500,000 people are being evacuated to safer areas in southeast Bangladesh ahead of a cyclone that forecasters say could be extremely dangerous. Cyclone Mocha is predicted to make landfall on Sunday with speeds of up to 170 kilometers per hour and storm surges of up to 12 feet. Well, Palestinians poured out onto the streets in Gaza City as a ceasefire between Israel and the militant Islamic Jihad went into effect. Crowds celebrating in the streets, emergency services and civil defense vehicles had their sirens blaring and lights flashing. The truce came into effect a few hours ago, signaling an end to the worst episode of cross-border fire in the last few years. And the agreement, brokered by Egypt, follows 5 days of violent exchanges which have killed at least 35 people, all but one of them Palestinians. There's been no comment from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu or other officials since news of the truce emerged. A Palestinian source told the BBC that the new agreement included a commitment by Israel to stop so-called targeted assassinations. Israel has been demanding a complete halt to rocket fire by Islamic Jihad at its citizens. Well, joining me now to discuss all of this and the ceasefire is Khaled El-Gindey, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute and Director of its program on Palestine and Palestinian-Israeli affairs. Thank you so much for joining us. We were looking at some of those scenes in the Gaza Strip, people in the streets celebrating. It would seem that the ceasefire is being welcomed. What's your sense?
Well, there's no doubt, particularly in Gaza, which has been under bombardment for 5 days. I mean, Gazans have been all over social media talking about the terror that they felt over the past 5 days. And so there's no question that there is a huge sigh of relief there in Gaza, in particular, since, you know, obviously in terms of firepower, what Israel possesses and can unleash is far greater than any single or group of Palestinian actors could ever inflict on Israel.
How fragile of a truce is this likely to be?
I think it's very fragile. I think we have to remember the way things began 5 days ago. 8 days before that, we had a ceasefire agreement. And then this week, Israel unilaterally broke that ceasefire agreement because it apparently for a combination of reasons, but a lot of it had to do with domestic pressure from the more extreme wing of Israel's already very extreme government. There were people in the Israeli government who were not satisfied with the ceasefire the week before and wanted basically to Israel to resume its policy of assassination, and that's how this ceasefire broke. And then, of course, Islamic Jihad responded with various barrages of rockets. So neither of these two sides have a particularly good record in terms of keeping their commitments to ceasefires. We've seen a number of outbreaks in the past couple years. And all of this kind of speaks to the absence of, at the end of the day, there is no military solution to whatever the problems are. Israel can't impose a quiet simply by, bombing Gaza. And certainly Palestinian rockets aren't going to achieve anything other than more death and destruction brought on by Israel's military. But all of this kind of points to the fact that there is no political process, there's no diplomatic process, and there aren't really even any responsible third-party actors beyond the Egyptians, let's say, who clearly have a direct stake in stability in Gaza because they have a border with Gaza. But one glaring absence is the role of the United States. I think this outbreak has been met with sort of a collective shrug, and besides kind of boilerplate.
Should the U.S. be doing more? Is there a political will in the United States to step in and try to broker a peace deal? We're seeing Egypt actually getting involved.
Yeah, I don't think there is any political will in Washington, or frankly from the European side. There's a lot of fatigue about the issue. I think the Biden administration in particular has downgraded the whole issue of the Palestinians' two-state solution. Many people feel is no longer possible, and the administration pays lip service to two states, but isn't really interested in pushing the issue, in large part because to do that would require seriously confronting an Israeli government that is very, very extreme, that has already abandoned the idea of two states, and is in fact much more aggressive in its dealings with the Palestinians on a whole range of issues. So the U.S. administration does not want to pay with the Israeli government, and frankly, doesn't want to spend political capital on the Palestinians.
You mentioned at the beginning that this is a truce that could be fragile. What is the key to at least extended, if not permanent, peace in the region? How can they get a ceasefire to finally stick?
Well, the key to connect the ceasefire to a bigger political process that addresses the core issues of the conflict, and they are many, and they are actually increasing. I mean, there is 100-year dispute between Israelis and Palestinians. You have two national groups with competing. Only of them has a state, and the other half or so, but 5 million Palestinians are stateless and living under Israeli rule. So if there was a way to address that, to end 56 years of Israeli occupation, then there would be hope. But like I said, there's no political will to deal with these very difficult issues. There's no way to address the core issues of the conflict without putting pressure on Israel, and that's something that the United States in particular does not want to do.
Never an easy solution in that region. Khaled El-Ginde, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute and director of the program on Palestine and Israeli-Palestine affairs. Thank you so much for your perspective. I'm Carl Nasman. Stay with us right here on BBC News.
Hello, here are the latest weather prospects for Europe, and the most unsettled weather looks set to be through the central Mediterranean. No prizes for guessing why. It's this weather system swinging its way northeastwards. Some heavy rain moving across parts of Italy, some particularly intense downpours along the Adriatic coast of the Balkans. That rain then bending its way up towards the Alps as well. Some places over the next 5 days, actually, say through the western side of the Balkans, could see 300 millimetres of rain, a succession of weather systems. So that could well cause some flooding, could certainly cause some travel disruption and some flight delays. For Iberia, well, not as hot as it has been at times so far this spring. 1 or 2 showers, but probably not as much rain as we really need in this part of Europe. For much of northwestern France, the Low Countries and a good part of Scandinavia, it is looking largely dry on Sunday afternoon with some spells of sunshine. So our first weather system slides northwards into the likes of Poland, the eastern side of Germany, but then another low moves into southern Italy, and this one is going to have some very strong winds associated with it as well. So not only heavy rain, strong winds could cause some disruption for the start of the new week. As we look further ahead, in Madrid, it's looking mainly dry for the next few days, 21 or 22 degrees. Rome will certainly see some rain, as will Budapest, just the odd shower at times in Athens.
Now showing on BBC Real.
Una erupción explosiva donde gran cantidad de material en la columna de erupción colapsó y cayó caliente sobre la nieve. Fundió la nieve, generó agua que al mezclarse con el material de la erupción siguió los cauces de los ríos y generó esas avalanchas que bajaron durante 2 horas por un cañones muy estrechos. Al llegar a la población de Armero, estos ríos se desconfinaron y fue donde se da toda la carga gruesa de esta avalancha.
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/real.
When the weather can't make up its mind, we can help you make up yours. Check on BBC Weather.
I think we can use a form of capitalism and continue to get its benefits while solving climate change.
We should remember that the globalization we had before brought more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
I don't wake up thinking, I'm here to change the world, but I wake up thinking maybe I can make the world a better place.
Women ourselves are finding our power. We always had a voice. We just weren't allowed to use it.
I think that's the strength of Georgia, and that's the resilience of Georgia, to be able to continue on its path towards Europe, towards NATO.
When big names talk, they talk to the BBC. Now on BBC